And they feel like, what else can we do? So you get this violent kind of way of making a statement. And I think to some degree I don't blame them. Because there are times where civil disobedience just doesn't work anymore. I think it worked well a while back in the 60s, certainly with Martin Luther King Jr. and others. But nowadays I'm not sure if just straight up civil disobedience works the same way that it used to. And we see a world becoming more violent. Again, why? When people feel hopeless and helpless. I mean, look at in Iraq, all these people that are joining ISIL because they feel like the rest of the world is abandoning them, which we are. Look at Syria. But you get the idea. You can see how it happens. You can see how they would be more open to various solutions and their morals and ethics may drop off somewhat. If you've seen any of these interviews with the moderate rebels in Syria, the leaders are basically saying, we're losing people every day joining ISIL because they feel like the world has abandoned us. And Al-Qaeda. So they're joining ISIL and Al-Qaeda. So when you got all this together happening, you can potentially get a totalitarian government coming to power. And what's ironic is in Syria they already have a totalitarian government in power, and by joining these radical groups it's going to get worse. Because we're not thinking clearly. And I can understand it. If you think about the fact I have no home, I have no job, I have no food, there's civil disorder, all these bad things are happening. Right? So Hitler, as I mentioned the other day, he comes to power at the end of January 1933. He's appointed chancellor. Remember, it has nothing to do with what he did. It was all that behind-the-scenes stuff, which I think I mentioned the other day. And that's what led him to come to power. And once he did, he solidified his power. He did a number of different things over the course of really the next 6 months that solidified him in the position of chancellor. The guy that did the behind-the-scenes stuff, he was appointed vice-chancellor. But it turns out he couldn't rein in Hitler. And once you're in power, obviously, if you want total control, you've got to do things to make sure you get total control. First thing Hitler did is that his campaign promises, he followed through on every one of them. Along the way, people lost civil rights. They lost freedom of speech. They lost, a lot of freedoms along the way. But it was little things. It wasn't like all at once. It was little things along the way. But he compensated for that by doing everything he said he was going to do. He said he was going to eliminate unemployment. He did. He said he was going to fix the economy. He did. Of course, the world economy was starting to become stronger anyway. But he played a role in this. He basically said, I will make Germany a world power again, and nobody will ever be able to defeat us again. And that's exactly what he did. He violated the Treaty of Versailles left and right, and nobody stepped in. He did some pretty nasty things, starting from the very beginning against the Jews. And really, the world community just didn't really do anything. And boy, the parallels just are phenomenal to what's going on in the world today. One of the things within about the first year, we know that the Nazis staged the burning of their Congress. It'd be like our Capitol building burning to the ground. And what the Nazis did is they blamed the Communist Party. And Hitler hated the Communists, absolutely hated them. And he blamed them, and he convinced Hindenburg to basically kind of declare the equivalent of martial law and give Hitler pretty much total power. It was known as the Enabling Acts. And the power was that Hitler could rule for a period of time by decree. And he convinced Hindenburg, being that it was the Communist Party that burnt down our symbol of democracy and Germany, the Reichstag, that we should outlaw all other political parties. And Hindenburg agreed. So and because Hitler could rule by decree, that was the first thing he said. How smart. That's not dumb. That is unbelievably smart. So all other political parties are outlawed. And from then on, it was pretty easy game to manage doing other things to give himself and his party more power and more control. Over time, they also created a lot of laws that started to really take away the rights of the Jews. little by little, because remember, Hitler really did hate the Jews. He absolutely hated them. We don't really know why. There's a number of theories out there, but he hated them, and he had a lot of people in his hierarchy that bought into that. And Hitler promoted that. Once he came to power, he promoted it left and right. I mean, Hitler very early on had control of the media, both newspapers, burgeoning radio, and other forms of media, and he promoted this idea that Jews are wicked, Jews are evil, Jews are bad. I mean, it's the same thing we did during the 1950s when we promoted the idea that communists, Red China and Russia, were evil and bad, and these people are terrible. And we did the same thing in World War II with the Japanese. We had all sorts of negative names that we used to describe the Japs, that being one of them. So it can happen in any population, that you can get people to buy into your rhetoric, especially if you control the media. And the thing to remember in Russia, Putin did the same thing. Once he got to power, little by little, he starts to take away certain types of freedoms. And the biggest one in Russia was the freedom to protest. He started having laws passed in their parliament, I use that term loosely here, that basically forbade anybody from demonstrating within certain distances of federal government buildings. And the way it was set up, that you basically could not protest in Moscow. And you had to get a special license to even do it if you wanted to, and you'd never get that license. He starts controlling the media. I mean, yeah, they still have democratic elections in Russia, but the opposing candidates never get any newspaper or airtime or radio time. So most people don't even know there are other candidates. And the airtime they get, it is Putin's party that's basically promoting ads that say everybody else is terrible. You don't want to elect these people. They're terrible, terrible. These are the bad things they've done. And if that doesn't work, well, he just comes up with some silly stuff to find them guilty of some sort of crime and puts them on trial and then takes all their money and puts them in jail. I mean, that's what he did with the richest man in Russia. The richest man in Russia, he took him down. He owned the oil companies, and he was a billionaire. And he basically created false charges against this guy. The guy was tried, and then the state took over the oil company. I mean, it's amazing. So, and we just, wow, we just kind of sit and watch. And we don't think anything's going to get worse now, considering what he's done in Ukraine. Remember, he just signed a big deal with China. Sell all the gas and oil to China. So, you know, the things that we're doing in Russia right now probably won't hurt as bad anymore because of that. And remember, the EU won't go after him either. This is so similar to what happened with Hitler. Nobody was willing to go after him. The EU won't because they need Russian oil, or they're going to freeze in the winter. So, you know, they can't add more sanctions against basically the fact that Russia has invaded Ukraine. It wasn't, and they did it with Crimea, but now Eastern Ukraine, they're marching troops in. It's like, holy shit. They've got missiles and all sorts of stuff over there. Nothing's going to happen, just like with Hitler. And there were reasons, because Hitler had built up his military. So the other thing Hitler did to solidify his power, so you see he does it politically by, you know, a number of little interesting things that he does. When Hindenburg died, by the way, which was about a year and a half into Hitler's chancellorship, Hitler basically had the Reichstag, which was, everybody had to be a Nazi now because all other parties were illegal. They voted to basically combine the position of chancellor and president. And once that happened, he's dictator, just like that. Again, the man was very smart. He was not stupid in how he did the things that he did. He made a few mistakes, thank goodness, because if it wasn't for the few mistakes, probably Europe would all be speaking German now, literally. But there were a few military mistakes that cost him. The other thing he did is Hitler had a special group of people known as the SS that protected him. Think of it as early on as his private bodyguard. It'd be like the Secret Service. Secret Service. Oh, that's interesting. So the SS, it stands for the Schutzstaffel. There was also another group within the Nazi Party that was the paramilitary branch of the Nazi Party, and they were called the SA. The Schutz, I can't remember what the A stands for, but the SA. This was the paramilitary branch. These were known as the brown shirts. If you remember your history, these were the ones that they'd walk around, they had dark brown pants and light brown shirts, and they were kind of military-like, and they were paramilitary. The head of the SA was a man by the name of Ernst Röhm, and I think it's R-O-H-M-N, I think. And Röhm was pretty powerful because the SA numbered by about 1933, 3 million. It was like 10 times, actually more than that, it was like 30 times bigger than the military in Germany. And this is, think about this, this would be like the Republicans have a paramilitary branch of 3 million members that have guns and clubs and, you know, they march around in uniforms. Okay? So it's alien to us. We've never seen anything like that. Röhm had a lot of power. And when Hitler became chancellor, the German military was very scared of Röhm because Röhm was always talking about we need to have a revolution in this country, another revolution, and get rid of the Weimar Republic. And Röhm had the power to do it. He had 3 million men that were paying dues that were part of the SA. And the German military, remember, 100,000. Because the Treaty of Versailles said it can't be more than that. So they come to Hitler and they basically say, look, if you do something about Röhm and the SA, right, we will back you as chancellor. You'll have the military on your side. So Hitler, okay, so he tries to rein in Röhm. He talks to him and says, look, you've got to stop this revolutionary rhetoric that you're promoting out there because you're getting the military nervous. And Röhm is like, you know what, you may be the leader of the party. You may be marked, you know, in your... at this point, Hitler isn't wearing that little uniform anymore. He's wearing civilian clothes as he appointed chancellor to make him look more friendly to the general population. And Röhm says, no, I'm going to keep saying what I'm saying and doing what I'm doing. And Hitler and Röhm go back many years. They were there from day one in the Nazi Party. Well, the other high-ranking members of the Nazi Party who were jealous of Röhm, especially the head of the SS only at this point numbered like 10,000 men. Röhm had 3 million. So the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, and others are saying to Hitler, talking in his ear here, and they're saying, you know, you've got to do more. You've got to get rid of Röhm. Because Himmler is thinking, if we get rid of the SA and we just ban the SA, a lot of these people will join the SS. So there's all this political stuff going on. And they finally convinced Hitler, we got to do something about Röhm. If you want the military backing the Nazi Party and backing you as chancellor, and you need them, we need to do something about Röhm. So they create an operation, I think it's in 1934 that this happened, called the Night of the Long Knives. And the Night of the Long Knives is when the SS, who is in charge of this operation, per Hitler's command to do this, they go out, and the SS is spread out also throughout Germany, just like the SA. It's not like all 3 million men are just in Berlin. The SA, you know, there's members everywhere. The SS and their high-ranking members of the SS go out and they arrest all the high-ranking members of the SA. And this night, these raids all over Germany. They arrest them, and the headlines the next morning in the newspapers, which Hitler kind of controls what goes in the newspapers, SA members arrested for treason, planning revolution. And now you might think this would make the Nazi Party look bad, but people saw this and they thought, wow, Hitler is really trying to even fix things within the Nazi Party. You know, that he's a stand-up guy. And these officials are arrested, including Röhm, and they're put on trial for treason. And they're all found guilty, obviously. And of course, these were, you know, not real trials. It was all a setup. And all of them were put to death. They were shot, firing squads. Röhm was arrested. He was given the opportunity to shoot himself. He was given a Ruger, a gun, a pistol, and was told, because you were the head of the SA, we're giving you the opportunity, instead of being put in front of a firing squad, to do the heroic thing and, you know, kill yourself. he was so angry and so upset he refused, and he basically said, when Hitler finds out what you're doing, and he had no idea what was really going on out there. He was arrested, he was being held in a jail, I think in Munich. He had no idea what was really happening, and he was like, when Hitler finds out, and they're like, who do you think gave the orders? And he didn't believe it to the very end. They ended up having to shoot him. He never did make it to the firing squad. He was never put on trial, and I think they had to shoot him 3 or 4 times to kill him. But this is what Hitler did. And again, you know, brilliant in the sense that he knew what he had to do to solidify his power. And once he did this, the SA was disbanded. Many of these people joined the SS. Himmler was happy, and that threat was pretty much eliminated. So there you go. So once you get in power, you know, what should you do once you're there? Especially if you want that kind of totalitarian government, you got to get the support of the people. Also, you have to take away some of their freedoms. Obviously, you're going to have to do that. And you do it in such a way where they don't really realize it's happening. And in a way, I'd say it's kind of like the Patriot Act in this country after 9/11, is that we lost quite a bit of our freedoms in this country. We didn't even see it. And, you know, they're going to be voting on it again soon to renew it, basically, probably within the next couple of months. And we don't even see it. You know, many people, because of the way government has looked at Snowden, look at him as a terrible individual. He committed an act of treason. But I think if you really look at what he did something really important here. We wouldn't even know what the NSA was doing if it wasn't for Edward Snowden. And he's being used, certainly he's being used in Russia, but nonetheless, if it wasn't for him, we'd had no idea that they were collecting all this data on us, and they still are. And they were in cahoots with Google. Google's an evil company. Watch out for Google. Now, once you're in power, how do you stay there? Right? Well, I've described some of the things you do. Kill the people that are opposed to you, apparently. But also come through on all your campaign promises, all the things you said you were going to do. And he did. I mean, he rebuilt Germany. Remember, by 1938, they were hosting, was it 38? The 38 Olympics that they hosted? I think it was 38. It couldn't have been 34. That would have been too quick. Yeah, the 1938 Olympics were in Berlin. And, I mean, he completely redid the country. He built the Autobahn, which was the first interstate in the world that was ever built. It was built for military purposes, but people could drive on. It was the first literally freeway or highway ever built in the world. He had this massive system throughout Germany. And again, he was planning ahead. He knew he was going to use it primarily for military purposes, but people who own cars could now drive and get to places a lot easier. Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz. That's Hitler. You know, so the next time you hop in your Volkswagen, just remember, next time you get in that Mercedes of yours, again, we don't talk about it much anymore, but those were really created and supported by the Nazi regime early on. He drove around in a Mercedes all the time. So again, staying in power. One, you got to have a charismatic leader. Hitler he was a good speaker. If you've ever seen any of his speeches, he could really get people riled up. I mean, he really was a good speaker, and he would start out he would stand there actually for a while. He would just stand there like this. And you know, you'd have 5, 6, 10, 50, 100,000 people out there. And he would just stand at the podium in front of the speaker, and he would just stand and look. And as everybody's chatting and blah, 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 and then he would wait. He wouldn't start until it was completely silent. Just stand there. And he'd start out slow. Start out with a really low voice where you really had to listen, and then over time during the speech, the rhetoric would build up, and he would become louder and more pronounced in what he was saying and his hand movements, etc. And he knew how to rile a crowd. He practiced a lot. He was good at it. Initially, he wasn't so great, but over time, he got better and better. And they realized it very early on in the early, he was actually hired by the Weimar Republic, the military of the Weimar Republic, to spy on the original group that eventually became the Nazi Party. A lot of people don't know that. He was actually hired to infiltrate them, and it was a group of nationals from World War I military that were kind of radical. It was maybe 200 members, and he was hired, literally being paid, to infiltrate and spy on them. And as he's doing this, he starts to realize he's buying into this rhetoric. He really likes what he hears, and he starts to become an active member. And then the leaders of this group realize that man right there is our future. And so it's crazy stuff. I mean, if he hadn't been hired to spy on this group, there might never have been a World War II. I mean, this is bizarre. It's interesting how it plays out. So he was charismatic, and they saw it from the very beginning. You also have to have a political party with a program and an organizing group. Again, this would be, the platform of a party. Most people don't even read a party platform anymore. You vote Democrat, and you don't even know what the hell their platform is. You vote Republican, and you don't even know what the hell their platform is. You should read the platform of the Republican Party for the state of Texas. I doubt most of you would agree with a lot that's in there. But we never read this stuff. But back in the day, a long time ago, before mass media and internet and all these things that we have that distract us today, people viewed politics as being very important to the future. And they knew what were in these platforms. And a platform just basically is, what does the party stand for? What are the party goals? And the organizing group for the Nazi party that eventually helped Hitler come to power was the SA. They were the ones going out there telling people vote for the Nazis. They were the ones going out there that were creating a lot of civil disobedience. They were going out and starting fights with the Communist Party, with the Catholic Party. They're the ones going out there saying, no, you can't go into this business. It's a Jewish business. If you try to walk in, they beat you up. They would promote this macho kind of image among young, unemployed men that don't have a lot of money, and it gave them something to kind of look at and view as, this is something I can do, and that's, again, how they built up that membership. And they're the ones that put the posters up, vote for Hitler, vote for the Nazis, this is why you want to vote for them and not the other party. So that was your organizing group. And they promoted that platform. Also, control communication. When you've got 3 million members of the SA out there putting posters up and preventing people from saying anything negative about the Nazis, you said something negative about a Nazi and an SA member was nearby, they were going to clobber you. And once Hitler came to power, that's when you really want to grab hold of methods of communication and control it. Just like Putin. I mean, Putin's charismatic. I mean, he really is. He's a good-looking guy. He's charismatic. He's crazy, but he's charismatic. So was Hitler. Crazy. In the sense that he had some really radical ideas. I mean, he wasn't mentally ill, per se. Just had kind of bad ideas. Again, Putin had that political party. He had the organization behind him. Remember, Putin was an ex-Communist Party official. And the idea that, somehow they're all gone. They're not all gone in Russia. They're still in charge. They just threw away their little cards. Communists can't have this anymore. But they're the ones that are still in charge over there. They got elected into government positions. And again, control communication. Certainly Putin has done that big time, and so did Hitler. And also, use symbols, because symbols unite. By the way, if you see any of these, I'll show you this. It's kind of interesting. Symbols do unite. Think about in this country, what happened after 9/11? What did you see everywhere? The flag. Suddenly, everybody's flying the flag. Everybody's wearing lapel pins, shirts with a flag, flags on windows of cars, flags on antenna of cars, everywhere. Symbols unite. Think about gangs. Gang symbols, whether it be colors, whether it be a particular type of shirt or a tattoo or hand gestures, etc. There are different symbols that unite people. I mean, did you see how the mayor of Minneapolis got in trouble recently because she was helping a number of people register voters in Minneapolis, and one of these individuals, and a couple of them were black males, and one of these individuals who was literally going house to house helping people in his neighborhood register to vote, and he had the name tag and everything that said he was hired by this particular group to do this. Apparently he had a history as a gang member, and the mayor didn't know it, of Minneapolis. So they take a picture together, and in the picture, they're standing next to one another with arm around one another, and they're doing this. And she's always points. She's been known, I don't know, she uses this gesture all the time. But it turns out for him, that's his gang member gesture for his, and so she gets into all this trouble because, you know, of course, the opposing party says, look, she's promoting gang membership, and, you know, it's like, oh my God, but that's what happened. But symbols do unite. The Nazis obviously used the double lightning bolt for the SS, and of course the swastika. And here are newer versions of the swastika. You can see these in tattoos today for members of the Aryan Nation and some other groups. But these, you know, there's your traditional swastika. These are recent actual versions of it that if you see as a tattoo, the odds are they're in some of those groups, especially within prison settings where, you know, you get the Mexican mafia and you get these other groups that have to come, you know, if you want to survive as a Mexican in a prison, you've got to join a gang. If you want to survive as black, you got to join a gang. And there are different groups, and of course the whites have their Aryan Nation and the Aryan groups, and these are the different kind of versions of the swastika today. So there you go. And symbols do unite. You saw it everywhere in Nazi Germany. And you still see it today in many ways. Come on. Now, once you're in power, as I said, these are the things you do to maintain power and control, and certainly there's more stuff you need to do. Do me a favor, the light switch that's closest to you, if you would turn that off. The one closest to me, I'm sorry. There's Hitler, his 50th birthday. You can see the swastika on his arm. The black uniform guards, that's the SS. The SS initially was his kind of bodyguard. They were there to protect Hitler because there were a lot of people that wanted him dead, even very early on when he became chancellor, and if not before that. Remember, Hitler spent time in prison in, 1921 because he tried to overthrow the Weimar Republic. It was famously known as the Beer Hall Putsch, where in Nuremberg, he and his little group of bandits, his little group of men, decided they were going to try and take over the government buildings in Nuremberg, and then throughout Germany, other German nationals would see what was happening, and they would do the same thing in their cities and towns, and there'd be this great revolution. Well, it didn't work. And he was put on trial, and the trial led